The phrase Super Mario 2 was originally Doki Doki Panic in Japan is really the dog ate my homework of listicle channels nowadays, isn't it? That one fact that everyone and their mother regurgitates ad nauseum. However, have you ever wondered, does the recycling of Japanese properties in the West also happen the other way around? And as evidenced by the existence of this video, yes it does. The occurrence of some mundane Western license getting an anime coat of paint in the land of the rising sun is quite a regular situation. So this episode, we take a look at these Western workings, these cultural compressions, and these incredulous iterations. As I say, but hello you. I'm Guru Larry, and I'll welcome you to Fact Hunt. 5 Western games that were animated in Japan. Is animated even a word? Don't care. Of all Sierra's many splendid point-and-click adventures, the Police Quest series is undoubtedly the straightest of the lot. Originally designed by ex-LAPD cop Jim Walls, they put you in the shoes of Lighton's finest Bobby, Sonny Bonds, as he solves crimes, tracks down killers, and deals with plenty of stereotypes. As Sonny, you're also expected to follow police procedure right down to the letter. These are the games where you have to walk around your car to check it over, otherwise you get a flat tyre, leave your gun in the locker, otherwise a perpetrator will grab it off you and blast you with it, and even the slightest deviation from proper procedure during any bust usually results in your either violent death or somebody else's. They're very, well, of their time, and they're quite straightforward stories compared to the adventures of Roger Wilco, or Larry Laffer, which makes the Japanese version of Police Quest 2, The Vengeance, one of the strangest anime-izations out there. The Japanese version, released on the PC 9801, entirely follows the plot of the Western original. However, everyone's had something of a glow-up. The blonde-haired Sonny Bonds is usually dressed pretty normally, but in Japan he now wears a blue suit and sports a rather impressive green pompadour. His chain-smoking partner Keith is, if anything, even greener in the old follicle department. And almost everyone else has received significantly bigger eyes and facial features. None more so than Sonny's stupid chief of a boss, who now also sports a massive pink afro. This certainly adds a lot of comedic value to the series, where he chews you out for not following procedure, which in all fairness is all the bloody time. I mean, what on earth were they going for with this one? It beggars belief. Now, no one totally knows why Police Quest 2 got this treatment, but Ken Williams did take a trip to Japan in the 80s, where he'd licensed games such as Sylpheed and Thexter for release in the West, exchanging them with Sierra's adventures. The other Japanese localisations for the likes of Space Quest and Quest for Glory didn't get the same treatment. But it's believed that the more serious and darker tone of Police Quest wouldn't have sat well with a potential Japanese audience, which is why Sierra decided to make changes that were very anime indeed. And having this amount of changes without simply making an entirely new game make the Japanese Police Quest 2 something of a unique entity. It's especially odd for such a realistic and straight-laced title now, isn't it? Of course, it wouldn't be a Fact Hunt video without some mention of an 80s British home computer game now, would it? And today's entry comes from a world that the majority of non-UK people watching can't hope to understand. And this time around, we're dealing with Monty Mole. Created by Gremlin Graphics and famous on the Commodore 64 and Spectrum, Monty Mole's your average Talpidian miner who decides to quit his job, steal loads of money, go on the lam from the police and rivals who want to bust his ass, and then spend all his dosh across the globe. He does this over a good few games, usually single-screen micro-platformer type affairs, and often packed with excellence, and actually now rather famous music from Rob Hubbard and Ben Daglish. They're pretty good examples of the sort of platforming you'd expect from the 8-bit machines of the day. However, Japanese software house Jaleco didn't seem too interested in the actual game side of Monty on the Run, they just wanted the name. But their version of the third Monty Mole game, well, Monty's not a mole anymore. He's a bearded humanoid Peter Sutcliffe lookalike who's on the run from the cops, slugs, alien xenomorphs and facehuggers in an Aztec temple, for some reason. The game, now titled Monty's Great Heart-Pounding Escape, there goes that Doki Doki again, and released for the Famicom Disk System in 1987, bears almost zero resemblance to the original at all. But it does still use the Monty name and Rob Hubbard's music, albeit just on the title screen, while also still being based around collecting various items and what have you. Gremlin, for their part, were happy to let Jaleco get on with their strange reimagining of their famous title, and even provided a bit of technical support. But this game, barely known outside of Japan, certainly goes down as the weirdest entry in this mole's adventure. Western developers Toys for Bob have been around for far longer than you may realise, first breaking through with the rather loved Star Control series of free-roaming space adventures on PC in the early 90s. However, before Activision threw them into the sausage factory that is developing endless Call of Duty sequels, they had a reputation for bright and cheerful platformers, working on everything from Disney titles to Skylanders, and more famously the new Crash Bandicoot and Spyro titles. Such games are pretty susceptible to animification as it turns out. I mean, have you ever seen those Japanese Crash Bandicoot commercials? But one of their earlier platformers received exactly that treatment. Pandemonium, the somewhat well-remembered 2.5D platformer from the 32 bits, where you play as either Fergus the Jester or a bowl-cutted acrobat named Nicky, whom weirdly make the decision to run away from the circus as opposed to joining it. It's not a bad little game at all, but if you happen to play the Japanese version, however, well, it jumps right into the deep end of La La Land. Bandai picked up the game for release over in the land of the rising sun, rebranding it as Magical Hoppers. Not only that, Fergus and Nicky are gone. They've been stripped out and replaced with Clam and Guppy, two magical children on a mission to save a place called, Amazing Land. I mean, bloody hell, the original game didn't have much of a plot, but it's like Lord of the Rings compared to this nonsense. It's also got a bunch of new and very anime cutscenes or stills, depending on whether you play the PS1 version or shafted with a Sega Saturn release. And before you actually commenters post, yes, Pandemonium did receive a sequel, albeit without the involvement of Toys for Bob, as a creatively titled Pandemonium 2. And yes, it also got a release in Japan, this time as Miracle Jumpers. However, Amazing Land being fully saved this time, Fergus and Nicky got their old jobs back. Sans bowl cuts this time, thankfully. And aside from replacing the idiotically password-only system of their Western release with memory card saves, it's pretty much the exact same game. Just thought you'd like to know that, really. I like being thorough. Me. Yep, it's yet another Toys for Bob game. Those poor old buggers just can't get a creative break with global developments now, can they? Toning down development of Pandemonium's follow-up, the studio's next game, Unholy War, got an even stranger makeover. Now, Unholy War is bizarre enough, being that it's a kind of hybrid between strategy and fighting that's not too well remembered nowadays. But it was released slap bang in the middle of that weird, short-lived arena fighting game fad. You know, somewhere between Urgeist and Power Stone. However, Bandai must have seen something in its design, as they decided that they wanted Unholy War to be a vehicle for the anime series Magical Girls. The resulting game, Magical Girls Little Witching Mischiefs, doesn't just feature gameplay from Unholy War. It's also got various things taken from Pandemonium, and an added layer of RPG on top, enough for it to be pretty much its own game that's just heavily inspired by Unholy War. Well, that's what Bandai wanted anyway, and they sure as hell tried to make sure they got it too. Constantly faxing over directions to Toys for Bob in the States, which had to be translated before they were carried out. In fact, the studio found this whole process so utterly tedious and slow, they eventually got fed up and just turned the bloody fax machine off. But the game did end up getting released anyway, so Bandai must have been satisfied. But don't you wish you could just turn your boss off with a flick of a switch and not face any repercussions for it? That'd be beautiful! If ever there was a game to be endlessly changed and rebranded wherever it was released across the globe, it would have to be Hewson's Nebulous. Oh, you know Nebulous! It's that game where you play as a green pig blob type thing and you have to climb up a tower. It's almost easier for me to say that than to call it an actual name. Originally released in the UK for home computers, Nebulous soon crossed the pond to the good old US of A, where it was renamed Tower Toppler for the Commodore 64 and Atari 7800 of all systems. Then again on its NES and Game Boy debut as Castellion. There's even an Italian bootleg called Sublime, apparently. All of these versions are basically the same game with the same hero. The only difference being that when it came to the NES, some little bonus platform stages were tacked onto the game to pad it out a wee bit. Well, that and justify why you're now charging 40 quid for a £10 game that was released 4 years prior. However, when it came to the Japanese release, someone was finally bold enough to actually change the immortal, green blob pig creature. The Japanese Famicom and Game Boy version was released as Koryo-chan Land, and if you know your Japanese candy, or randomly being recommended weird Japanese adverts by YouTube, you'll know that Koryo-chan is the mascot for a range of sweets known as Choco Balls that have been around for donkeys of years. And you now get to play as Koryo-chan himself, as he, climbs up some towers. Does this have anything at all to do with chocolate? No! But there have been a couple of tweaks, and you can even collect Choco Balls for some bonus points, which is certainly tastier than eating jewels in the original. Nebulous certainly has had a weird time with releases, what with 1,000 or so different names it goes under and everything. But the Japanese food mascot version of the game might be the strangest chapter in the life of Little Pogo. That's the blob pig thing's name, by the way. And yes, there are plenty more animated adaptations of well-known Western games. This, my friends, is only the tip of the iceberg. Hello you! Thanks ever so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe to be first to see future Fact Hunt episodes. Click on the bell if you already are to make sure you're notified, and be sure to check out my other episodes. And if you want to be super awesome, check out my Patreon. But thanks again for watching, and I'll be seeing you next time. Ta-ra for now!